Boom. Thank you for joining us. Tech Tuesday. Rajiv retitled this a slightly less aggressive name. Integration domination sounds very intense. This is not going to be that intense. Our intention isn't to dominate all other integrations. It just rhymes. So, and that was fun. Today we're going to chat about the APIs. We're going to talk about some of the different mechanisms. A lot of you already know how this stuff works because you've done it and you've made them, but maybe you haven't. And so you're going to hopefully get some information. If you have questions along the way, put them in the chat. And, or you can use the reactions to raise your hand. If you think something's very funny, you can use the joy emoji, or, if you want to, say, oh, I love that thing about that API, there's all sorts of great reactions you can use. So, Cal's surprised, I believe.
I'm shocked
He's
at
shocked.
All the emotion.
So I'm Drew Bowman. I'm the Director of Engineering for Kuali Research right now. I work with all the research teams, product lines. And mostly what I'm going to be here for today is supporting, and if you have questions, we also maintain and manage the identity service, which is a place that every single person is going to integrate with. But we're going to kick it off by going to the, what's a good R word for you, Rajiv? What's like, ridiculous sounds mean. Ridiculously awesome, Rajiv? We're going to go to ridiculously awesome Rajiv, who is one of our customer success engineers. Cal's also going to share some stuff later, but Rajiv's going to start with some of the ways that people are integrating right now with Kuali and talk about some of the different APIs that we have available. And if you have questions along the way, you can put them in the chat. We'll be watching, and there's going to be I'd say pretty extended time at the end for questions. So why don't we kick it off, Rajiv? Tell us about DEM APIs.
Sure. Just give a quick intro. I'm Rajiv Mancherel, Customer Success Engineer for Kuali Research. I've been working with Kuali for the last 3 years. Prior to that, been doing some Kuali implementation and contributing to the product through Foundation. Cal, do you want to give a quick intro? So after that, I can.
Sure. I'm Cal Corbin. I'm a Customer Success Engineer here at Kuali. I'm on the Research Customer Success team. I work with Rajiv every day. I've been at Kuali for about 7 months now, so still learning the ropes. Bit of a new business logic space for me, but I previously was a node developer at various companies, and yeah, short story about me.
Thanks, Cal. So let's jump into the session. So today we are going to look at how our customers can access their data and do various integrations. The different ways, like different mechanisms that are available that our customers can access their data. So 3 different options here. One is with REST API, read replica, and data extract. So the APIs are bundled with the product, so which means you can use that anytime. It's available to you. We have several documentations on different APIs that are available, and you get to access pretty much all the document and all the data that's stored in cloud. The second option, read replica, and the third one, data extract. It's on request. We set that up, read replica, and we schedule a data extract, whether it could be either a daily extract or a monthly extract of the full data that's stored in the database. So looking at some of the integration options for using APIs, we'll talk about what the APIs that are available on different areas, different categories, and some of the use cases for these APIs, and some of the options that are available, And towards the end, we look at like some of the case studies as well. So the first one, like now we are looking at HR import. Basically, we have an option to integrate it with your local HR system. It could be any system that that's available, but HR endpoint is expecting the data in XML format. We can use that APIs, which we'll go through that in the next slide. And you can upload that file, which will process the user information and persist in our identity management system. The second one is about the CRUD operation, basically using it's like your SQL select statement, like your all SQL operations, wherein you can create, read, update, and delete any of the records. It's basically tied to the business object, and which is mapped to the underlying tables. Document operation. By document operation, I mean like just dealing with all the transactional documents. Basically, your award document or institutional proposal. You can create new documents. You can version existing document. Financial transaction is dealing with award. Any award that's posted, you can pull all the award information, posted awards, and financial endpoints let you pull in all the posted awards and then acknowledge back saying that you have retrieved it. This is like, no, see my screen. Okay. The option for read replica, we can set up a read replica. I think most of our customers are using that option with our sponsored program, where it's data is persisted in MySQL database. We set up the read replica, so which is a real-time data that you can access, all your documents. Data extract is available for both sponsored program as well as the compliance modules, COI and protocols. So as I mentioned earlier, depending on like what you're looking for, whether a daily extract or a monthly extract, we can schedule that and it's uploaded to S3 bucket, and we share all the credentials that's that you can access the specific your S3 bucket, download the data, and use it for integration. Probably like I can push it to your warehouse or to your target database. Is it like covering my screen, or am I fully sharing my screen, or is it? I'm just trying to see.
Great screen, Rajiv.
Yeah, it looks good.
Perfect.
That's good. Okay. All right. Thank you. So some of the API use cases here. So we are talking about, like earlier we talked about the HR import. So that's to synchronize your user accounts with your local HR system. That could be anything like Oracle, PeopleSoft, or like anything that any internal system that you have. As I said, like the data is expected in XML format. I'll show you an example of that in the next slide, probably. And you can upload that XML file, and the response will be in a JSON format. You can use the API endpoints to check the status, and also there's an option to configure an email, which will trigger an email once the process is complete. We touched the CRUD operation a little bit earlier, as I was mentioning about, and it's just to add, update, delete records, and select using the methods that are available: get, post, put, patch, and delete. Obviously, it's very clear, like what's being done there. Get is to fetch, post is you can create new records, put and patch is pretty much same to update. The only difference is that put, you're sending the entire object back, whereas patch just the attributes that requires a change. So it's always better, like patch is available. You're just changing the one attribute, like that you have to change. For example, probably a status code or something for an institutional proposal or an award. You can just put that in there, so you don't have to like completely send the entire object back. And we have the delete operation. I think mostly, like in most cases, we are not deleting the record as such. It's just flipping the flag. We have active indicator in most and mostly in all the tables. So we'll just turn it on or off depending on the action that's being taken. Document operation, I mentioned that earlier a little bit. It's about like creating new documents. You have an option to create award, subaward, institutional proposal, or version an existing document. The financial transaction, it's basically all the awards like that are posted. If you hit the financial endpoint, you get to retrieve all the posted awards, and then you acknowledge back saying that it's been retrieved so that it doesn't get pulled next time when you access the same endpoint. So along with that, Kuali completely rely on all these APIs for our data migration, whether it's like sponsored program or our compliance modules. We completely rely on all these APIs. That helps to validate the data before it's actually being pushed to create various documents there. So we can just make sure it's in a clean state before it's converted, before the data is migrated there. A quick example of some of the responses that I put it here. So basically, you can use one of these. You can look at the response and then take the necessary action. If it's if it's successful, okay. Then if you need to update some of your internal system, anywhere you want to update the status of that, probably that'll help. And if there are any errors, like for example, you're just doing a updating a data, and if it comes back to the 400, probably most likely there is a validation error, and the response should give you what the exception is. And unauthorized token. So so all these APIs, it's not open. You'll have to have an access token to access any of these APIs. So if you don't have the right token in place, it'll just send you back an unauthorized error. So just basically, system needs to know that you're an authorized user and you have access to that data. So we have an option in core where in the identity system where you can create auth tokens or API keys, and then use that keys to access the different endpoints that are available. For probably resource not found and the 500, it's anything that apart from the normal cases where chances if the server is not accessible at that point. So this is a slide I was just talking about earlier is a quick example of the HR import. So you're using your API key, the right API key there. The file that you wanted to upload, basically that's the XML file, and that is the endpoint where you'll hit just to upload that XML file. We have a Zendesk article that talks about how you can set up that, and if you have a CSV file, if you don't have an XML file, and if there's a CSV file, we share a tool that's available. I think it's in Ruby, which you can convert from CSV to XML format and use that. So you can have a job schedule that will do the whole process and then invoke that API probably nightly to synchronize your user accounts with your local HR system. Below is a sample response that you'll see if there are no, it'll do a quick validation as soon as it hits the API, make sure the XML is, you have uploading a file and it's all valid. Before it doesn't do a data validation at that point, but if it's all good with the first pass, it'll just send you back a response with an import ID and status saying that it's processing. So, and the next section, you can see that how you can check the status. Basically, you're using the same import ID from the above response, and you can use that endpoint to look at what's going on, how it's being processed, whether it's complete. And as I mentioned earlier, there's also an option that you can specify in the XML file. You can just specify the email address, which will trigger the status once it's complete to that email address. Let's go. Okay. A quick example here, another one for to get the sponsors. So that's the endpoint to fetch all sponsors. It's probably like if you're going to hit that endpoint, you're going to retrieve all the sponsors. Like there are cases like where you have like the data is like way too high, and it might be easy if you wanted to like easier to handle like if you have a smaller results there, response back that you get. For that, like we have already implemented paging, and you can use that option to limit your results. Basically, you can just specify like the start index and the limit. And we have already included all the information in the response header that indicates like how many pages you have to navigate. So basically you can just specify like you can change the start index and navigate through the pages to pull all the records, and it'll be clean and easy to navigate through all the results in that case. Also below is an option like how we can filter the results, just giving a sponsor code, just filtering that record by the sponsor code. This is an article Jessica put together where we have like additional examples and some additional information on different APIs that we can access. So we're talking about some case studies here in this section. So it's basically like, and I'm just just highlighting, it's not limited to any of these APIs that are available. And as I mentioned earlier, we have tons of APIs in sponsored program. But like just highlighting some of the case studies here, like where customers are, how they're integrating and which APIs they're using, widely used APIs, basically, like just to synchronize data across their system, local system. One is a financial transaction, which they retrieve the posted awards and push it to their local financial system. HR import, it's integrating with their local HR system. Training APIs, we already have city training enabled if for those who are willing to do that. If not, like it's supported by APIs. You can use training APIs to load training data. Sponsor API we just looked at earlier, COI projects. It's pushing those projects to COI again, like it's expecting data in a it's all JSON, but like in a certain mandatory attributes there, which is once it's said, like you can use those APIs, those endpoints to push projects to COI. Award APIs, awards, creating documents, institutional, same with the institutional proposal. There are like identity APIs. I know like there are a few customers where they don't have a sponsored program in place where whenever they enable the HR feed. So they're using the identity APIs to load user information, user accounts to core identity management system. Basically, they're synchronizing it with their local HR using the APIs. And several of these APIs are used to pull the data and use it for reporting purposes. Here is an example from University of California Office of the President, UCOP, where they're doing their financial integration as well as synchronizing the sponsors with their RAMS. I think it's enterprise management system. I'm not going to go deep into it, but at a high level, based on the conversation that I had with them in the past, they have this RAMS enterprise management system where they create all the sponsors and publish sponsors, and that is their single source of truth for all the sponsors. So they just want to pull all the sponsors from there and synchronize it with sponsor records in Kuali Research. So they're using like pulling that information in a file, pushing it to the file transfer mechanism. I think it's Go Anywhere. And then they have the MuleSoft in the middleware where they file connector could probably pulling that file and then invoking the API to make sure like that sponsor already exists in the system. If not, if there is an update, use a put or a patch to update that record. Also, they're pulling the financial API, using the financial APIs, pulling the posted awards and pushing it to their Oracle financials. So do we have anybody want to share their unique experience with any of the APIs?
We've got a few questions that it'd be great to we could run through. Steve, why don't when you answer a question, why don't you just say your name and then what institution you're with? Steve, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I'm Steve Ashwell, University of Illinois. So basically, just wondering if the CRUD operations are direct data manipulation, or if, like on an award, does it actually create a version with that new information?
So there are different options there. Like one is directly you can access the table, which is the CRUD operation. That's what it does. The other one is the transactional document, which I mentioned earlier, which is a different endpoint wherein you can create a new document and you can version the document. The CRUD operation, which is basically directly access to the table. And as I mentioned earlier, if you want to change the status code, you can use that to change that, like in a few attributes that you need to change.
And one quick follow-up, is that available on award and subaward, or because I did not see the methods in the API document for subaward?
It should be available. I think in most cases, like we have pretty much mapped that to all the business objects and underlying tables. But if something is missing, Steve, if you can let us know, we can definitely take a look at it. In the past, like I know, like we have by default enabled all the get methods, like so you can retrieve the data, but there are restrictions on how you can make changes. But we have enabled those like upon request, and definitely we'll take a look into that.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, Rajiv. Thanks, Steve. Tyler?
Yeah, I've recently been working with the HR and import job, and using a tool like Postman to feed the data. The response back is when what's being sent is malformed, so it produces an error. You get almost nothing to know what's going on. And when we're pushing that to a cloud instance, we're not going to be able to look at the server logs to see what's going on either.
So are you uploading a file, XML file for the HR feed, Tyler?
Yeah, we were working with a automated process to feed that file. We ultimately got it working because I was able to debug a local instance and see what's going on, and figured out finally what was missing from our the document that's or the API call headers and body. Once we got that finally figured out loud, it started, we were able to get it to work. But it was very painful trying to do that and have to, start up a debugger to track the message coming in. And, even at the get-go wasn't that clear,
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I could think of is like for some reason the XML is malformed, and probably like now we are not sending back the response at that point, the right response. Did you get a import ID returned like as soon as you uploaded the file?
When I had a document that was properly formed, it was successful, but there was parts. Well, one, using the curl command as was in the documentation worked fine. Problem is, can't automate the curl command through the tool we were using. So we had to create a mappy document essentially and pass it along. And what was missing is, I guess, curl adds some behind the scenes document header information, content length being the one that was tripping us up. Once we got that in place, then we got through the first part of the error. And then, if we had a malformed XML document, we still didn't gain any information, but it, throws back that it's a bad submission. So messaging back to the client would be very much appreciated, and not bury it into the application logs. Since being in as a cloud customer, as far as I know, we don't have access to those application logs. If we can get to them, that'd be great. Then we can see what's going on. But I imagine that's not a possibility.
Yeah, completely understand. Tyler, I made a note of it. We'll just probably we have a testing scenario here, just to see if what happens if the XML is malformed, and what response we are sending back. And
you need to go on both sides, both the headers, missing pieces, and then obviously the XML document is not a valid formatted document.
Boom.
Sure. Yeah, I've made a note of it. We'll try to figure out what's going on in there, Tyler. Thanks for that feedback.
We'll hit. We've got a lot of good ones in here. We'll do from Dalu. You had a couple real quick, and then we'll get to everyone else's after, and we'll loop back around on those. But why don't you go ahead and ask your questions?
Yeah, in general, for batch processing, when you load HR data or whatever data that we have through the API, how do you identify that one? How does it process? Is it the whole file that we import? And if there's one data row that is malformed or invalid, how does it process or reload that one record? How do we identify it and how do we reload it?
Good question. So as far as with the HR import, you get to know, it doesn't stop processing right there. If there is an invalid record, it'll just skip that record and it'll just go and process the next one. So when you check the status, you get to know what all the validation errors are. You get to fix those errors, and when you run the import next time, that should take care of everything, and it should push all the users. If there are no errors. For the bulk upload, I know we have options, different options, where some of those endpoints support array of objects. So you're asking if what happens if one fails, right? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not sure at this point, how it's treated on that endpoint. Might have to test that scenario and see what it does exactly. But definitely we can test that and then reach out on how we can do that. But what I think is what it might process as similar to what we have for HR feed. It might process all those but it may not update or create that particular record, but just need to see what the response is, whether the response is clear about where it went wrong and which record has a problem, which I need to take a look at it and probably might be able to give you more information on that.
Great, thank you. And then on the CD training data, you mentioned that we can pull from our local system. Can it directly pull from the CD training side?
Yeah, we have training endpoints which you can use to upload the person training data there.
Okay, cool. We'll get to the other questions. We'll loop back around still. I want to make sure that Rajiv and Cal get a chance to finish up there. But why don't you go ahead and tell us some more about these amazing case studies, Rajiv?
Yes. The other option is, just continuing with the case studies, the other option is once we have read replica enabled, we can use the MySQL CDC connector, which basically is the change data capture. And, you get to know what options are available and how you can capture the change events, like where the change is, like basically it has, probably like there are like multiple options available. One is using triggers and the other one is like binary logs. Once we enable the binary logs, I think that's the preferred method that's being used by mostly. I'm sure like University of California, San Diego is using a similar approach where the binary log is enabled and you're just watching that change logs and pushing it to Kafka. Do we have anybody from UCSD to confirm that or share their experience?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not directly working with it, but yes, I think that is correct.
Sounds good. Thanks, Harrison.
No problem.
And the next option, as we mentioned earlier, it's a data extract. So I know, like there are like customers who schedule their a job either nightly or like on a daily basis, depending on like, again, as I said, like we have two options for the extract. One is like daily extract and monthly extract. So they can download the data from the S3 bucket and push it to their target database or data warehouse. And probably, I think in most cases, they're using for data analytics and reporting purposes. So is there anybody who want to share their experience with that?
I can say that that's going to be in our future. We don't have it set up yet, but I can see it happening soon. And I posted a question to the chat. I might as well ask it now that I'm talking. What strategy have you seen that people have used to take MongoDB and bring it into a local relational, a database on-premise that's a relational database?
So from MongoDB, you're talking about like pushing it to MySQL or like Oracle. Is that the question?
Yeah, that's the scenario.
I really don't know like if anybody's using it. Like all these extracts are dump file, like say it's a MySQL dump or a MongoDB dump that we push it to our S3 bucket. But I think like there are options available with data migration services, at least with AWS. I know they have some kind of service which does a conversion of Mongo to MySQL. So I'm pretty sure like there might be tools available that wherein you can convert the Mongo collections to appropriate tables in either like MySQL or Oracle.
Yeah, just chiming in here at IU, we are getting these S3 bucket dumps. We import them into a MongoDB locally, and then we promptly extract that into some JSON that we can basically shove into a MySQL database. And then we kind of leave it up to the reporting team to do most of the parsing of that JSON. So I wouldn't say it's pretty, but it gets the job done.
Something we do for our internal reporting tools is that we actually extract to Postgres for our Sisense reporting tools. And so it dumps into JSON-B columns essentially. And then we transform it into materialized views using queries is one thing that we've done. So you can sort of transform it into the mechanism you want using queries to sort of get the information you need to get out of there. You could do, I think aggregates is generally better. If you check them out, there's a lot of power to Mongo aggregates you can do. But if everything else is a SQL, it might make sense to sort of dump it into some JSON-B columns and then transform it. So that's something that we do and that other people do. So
at CSU, we've done pulled the Mongo extract and spun up a Mongo database, and then we have a process that does basically ETL transformation into our relational database. That's primarily for the compliance modules. One thing to be said about that is it's a nightmare trying to find all those, or to map the multi-select and multi-value drop boxes and that to the actual value that the gibberish code means. Just the way that was designed, to get the data out is a nightmare.
I think that the COI module is worse with that than the IRB modules and the ICOOK modules. I think, because I think we've modified it so that we start storing the actual raw text as opposed to just sort of the normalized value. But yeah, that is sort of complicated because you have to grab the sort of, you have to reference the formbot template to see what those combo options are going to be and cross-reference that, which would be.
Yeah, I think we did.
We've got a worse problem than that. We're extracting from protocols at University of Waterloo, and we got on early and we learned the hard way that if you modify a value, then on a, let's say, radio option, the ID remains the same. So we now have to compare against different versions of we have to check the version and then output the value for our relational database based on what the version of the template the form was using is. So you have to be really careful with this when you go from the Mongo to a relational database.
Chris, are you talking about the config ID that's associated with that protocol? So you have to go back, look at that config, the template.
Yes. Yeah, we have to look at the, this is config ID. It's before 34, so we have to take this version of the association. After 34, we have to associate it to this different value.
The good news about all of that for you, and I don't know if it's good news or not, but we all do the same stuff. We have to correlate because we have to make it work for everyone too. Not that's necessarily great news, but if you have Zendesk specific Zendesk questions that you want to put in too, like, we're going to try to get to a bunch of these, but a lot of these, your best bet for these, even these technical ones, there's sort of two mechanisms, and we'll touch on this again later, but Zendesk is good because it'll get through to Rajiv and Cal, and then eventually even to the product engineers to help support that. And then the other thing is we do have generally open, we didn't have it last week, but we do every month have what had previously sort of been the on-prem discussion, but we're sort of morphing to just sort of be general technical office hours, where you could come and get sort of technical discussion with some of the engineers on the team that we can see about opening up that, and I think we're going to post more of that to Zendesk as well. But yeah, that's certainly a thing. I think sharing and collaborating what different people have done, especially around this Mongo and how you normalize it, I think it's super helpful. And that's one of the ideas of that sort of group, is to sort of continue to help share ideas, how we're doing it, how you're doing it. We've got some Mongo aggregates for protocols that we've written up that could be helpful to some people. And that Cal's done some different things around. So there's a lot of things that we can collaborate on across schools. I think that, because we're all, including us, are trying to do the same stuff. We're trying to provide reporting, some level of reporting to people who don't have developers that can put this stuff together. We want to try to support y'all in that. So those are really great questions. Thanks so much for that. We'll try to loop back around on a lot of these too, but yeah.
I think just wanted to hand it over to Cal so that he can share some of the case studies and some user experience here. So let's continue with that. Cal, it's all yours.
Okay. I'll just add on to the Mongo abstract. If going into MySQL isn't an option for you, or you have more JavaScript resources, the aggregates are great tools. But sometimes I think just with the way Mongo is designed, the aggregates aren't always going to be readable. It's one of those things you can write and come back to a month later and not fully understand what you wrote. So I also would suggest Mongo shell scripting is a great tool for creating repeatable queries with your data around that extract. And I am a big fan of it because you can create a lot of reusable functions that way that you can use across different collections. So that's just another option there with that. But going back to my presentation, Cal Corbin, I'm a customer success engineer here with Rajiv on the research team. And I'm going to talk quite a bit more high level, not quite as technical, but I want to talk to you all just with visualizing API integration with Kuali. And what that means is I'm just going to tell you a bit of a small short story that where one of our customers came up with a innovative and somewhat complex solution for one of their very specific business needs. And so for me, as a software developer, documentation around software is one of the best things ever. However, sometimes, especially in these sandboxes, seeing all that documentation and knowing about all those endpoints can be overwhelming, and I don't quite know where to start. So I think for me, stories are just a great way to catalyze those ideas, and I hopefully can catalyze some ideas for you to take back to your organization. So if you'll click the next slide, Rajiv.
Sure.
So as you all know, every university is different. You bought Kuali because you wanted to streamline your solution and create a more homogeneous, uniform solution to whether it's awards, protocols, whatever you're using Kuali for. Beforehand, you had legacy systems. You either another cloud provider, another database system, maybe even Excel sheets or filing cabinets. You had previous systems before this. You'll click the next slide. So when you bought Kuali and you replaced those legacy systems, some of you may not have actually had the option to just dump that old system altogether. You still have to maintain that because perhaps you were not the only organization at your university or the only team using that legacy system. And for this particular customer, that was their case. They had purchased Kuali to replace how they were tracking the awards in their system. But this is their legacy system was a Microsoft Access database, and they still needed to maintain that legacy database because they weren't the only ones using it at the university. And that legacy database also contained all of their expenditures that were tied to awards. So the front end was working great for their awards. They needed to come up with a solution so that the expenditure database was not just left to basically decay. So what they did is they leveraged one of their API developers in the university, and they had their API developer work with our customer success team to come up with a solution where basically every single time an award was created, they then hit their financial endpoints and took that JSON data and piped it back to the Microsoft Access database. And they were then able to tie the award accounts that they had created in Kuali with the expenditures in their Access database and completely automated that solution. So I think that for me, the takeaway there's a few takeaways, and it's going back to every university is different, and there's going to be different problem spaces and unique solutions needed in those problem spaces. And APIs are a good way to take initiative and build the solution that works for you in your place. And I also just think with the API integration, it's a good tool for bridging silos in your organization. So you can use that Kuali API to enhance either legacy systems or to start creating single sources of truth between different groups at your university. So you're all using the same data. And I also think it's also, you purchased a robust front end, but you also purchased a robust API. And that tool is there for you to use, as well as our customer success team. And I know a lot of this talk has been pretty deep into the API with the HR import and all that. But at a high level, if some of you listening aren't entirely comfortable with APIs, or you don't have an API developer available at your organization, I do suggest just check out Postman. It's a great tool, and there's lots of tutorials out there to use it where you can start familiarizing yourself with APIs, how to use them, better understand them, and then perhaps start integrating them into your workflows. And our customer success team is here to help you with that. So with that, I think we can open it up to some more questions. Kept
More
that kind of
great
short.
questions. We got a lot of good questions over here. So I am having a hard. Okay, I've got one from Harrison. And once again, yes, just let us know what institution you're with.
UC San Diego.
Cool, excellent, warmer than here, probably.
Yes, yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, why don't you ask your question?
So yeah, I've been deep into the HR import for months now, and I'm trying to. I've gotten about 3,000 errors down. We have a huge HR feed and some identity issues of our own on our side. But what happens is I get early errors, like after maybe 30 minutes of running the XML upload, bulk upload via API. And then about an hour and a half later, I'll get the remaining errors. And it's a little black boxish to me about how, like, what can I call the monolith with an API? I know how to call core with an API, but just the relationship between what I've heard is called the monolith and what I've heard is called core would be great to have a little bit more detail. Maybe there's a Zendex article that I should have been reading. I don't know.
I think that's a helpful suggestion. Yeah. You know, when we talk about core, we talk about our identity service specifically, and it manages SAML, manages institutions, it manages users and groups for all of the products. The monolith, as we call it, is really the sponsored programs modules. It's the thing that some of you that are here today have wrote on and created. It is the Java monolith. It uses something called RICE and Kuali Identity Management to handle a lot of that stuff. And so when we speak monolith, that's sort of what we say when we mean monolith, is really those sponsored programs modules. It handles things like the unit hierarchy and roles. And then the compliance modules, they go seek, but specifically IRB and iCook. COI still relies on the monolith for information about its permissions to a degree, but all of the hosted solutions use identity, use the core identity, core main, if you have access to the repositories, for access, for authentication. But then once you're authenticated, they're associated via school ID. The user, so you set up school ID when you in your HR feeds, and that's what associates that user to the user in the monolith, or in like a SP modules. The IRB and iCook modules, the protocols, they just talk directly to core main, which is what we say when we mean core. So I'm specifically, I'm not certain about what exactly you all are experiencing. I know that you all have had some challenges.
So is that if that is an endpoint, like Harrison, you're talking about the research, the sponsored program endpoint, like those are with the users, the identity management users that are in the identity management table in sponsored program. So you get that those are different endpoints if you want to look at like the principal ID, principal name that's stored in the database.
Yeah, because so far as I can tell, when I call the API to core, I don't get principal name back. So my assumption is that exists only in the monolith. And can I hit the monolith via API?
Yes. Yes.
I'd love to get the documentation on
it's
how to
it's
do
in
that.
the API. Even if you look at your domain REST API documentation,
okay,
I think it's under the system section where you get to see principals. If you search by principals, you get to see like principal ID, principal name, where you can get the user information.
Thank you. I don't want to take up all the Q&A, so I'll go
Yeah,
back.
please feel free to reach out, like, if you bump into any issues.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
and
much.
since we're running short on time and you all have had really great questions, I want to sort of mention again, the best way to get these answered, all of them, is to, well, Omar just shared in the chat, the API docs. This is going to be the API docs for the SP modules. This will be for all of the SP modules. They're in Zendesk. There's links to the API docs for the conflict of interest module and the protocols module and core identities. So for things we
I also want to refer to
Yeah.
the article that was
Hey.
posted previously.
Yeah,
All the
Jessica.
information should be in there.
Oh yeah, Jessica's got it.
So
Yeah, so
hopefully it's there. If there's also examples. One of them was actually person information, like retrieving person
Perfect.
information from the monolith.
Yeah, so that is good. You don't have to flood Jess, our amazing customer support person with tickets. Sorry, Jessica, for saying they should. But if there are things you're like, hey, can we change this thing? Things to post, things like that. There's things like the community forums are great. Putting a ticket in through Jessica that will make its way to Cal, Rajiv, myself, and Omar and others. And we want, Jessica just posted again in the chat the great link to the technical API overview of all links to all the different APIs. Jessica, quick, did we post the link to the Zoom link to the updated technical user group / office hours on Zendesk?
I believe we
Did I give you
did.
that? Okay, I thought we're gonna make sure, we'll double check.
We'll
and make
double
sure it's
check,
up there. But monthly that happens on the certain Tuesday of the month, which I don't remember, whatever the last one was. We'll be having that an open. You can come to that, but often if we can't get to it as a community in that time, you can, obviously I would post questions about things like your Mongo questions. What are other people doing about transforming Mongo form data for protocols? Asking that in the community forums is a great place to go to have us collaborate more. And then, come into those meetings, and talk through the team. But, we're out of time. We have 2 minutes. I'm trying to see if there's anything that we can answer in 2 minutes. Does anyone have a good 2-minute left question? 1 minute now. You got to go quick with it. It's got to be good.
So I just posted the link to the forum, the community forum
Perfect.
for technical questions. So if you do have more, that might be the great place to put it.
Yeah.
You do need to log into Zendesk or our support portal to be able to access community. But we'd love to have these types of discussions there too.
Yeah. I'm going to see if we can add this to the details of in the description information of this talk. So you all, I'm going to see if I can get these links put in there just so you can come back and reference to that if you haven't grabbed it. But y'all, this is great. Probably going to see all of you in like 15 more minutes at our community collaboration talk called Contribution Revolution. They all rhyme, I think. No, not the last one, but these Tech Tuesdays talks. We're really thankful for you coming and asking your questions. Thank you, Rajiv and Cal, for putting this together. You're great. And thank you for everyone's questions. We'll see you probably in like 15 minutes. Catch you all later. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye out.